GPT-5 is a bunch of children under a trench coat trying to get into an adult film. It's not just one model. It's a number of little submodels inside GPT-5 that they've wrapped up in this unified model. The idea is great. The idea is that the GPT will be able to work out what type of task it is and then route you to the correct submodel. So there is GPT-5 high, GPT-5 medium, GPT-5 low, and then GPT-5 minimal, which is really bad. The problem is with routing. At the moment, the router, which sends you to the different models or submodels, is rubbish. And it seems at times to be fairly random. So the blueberry question comes up here. It annoys me so much that every time a new model comes out, people on LinkedIn in particular is guilty of this. Do that. Oh, how many R's are in blueberry, or how many B's in blueberry, or how many R's in raspberry, whatever it is. One, these are large language models. They're not computers. We have computers for that. They are not calculators. We have calculators for that. So it's using the wrong technology for the job. But that said, the higher end models can answer this problem. Like how many R's are there in Raspberry? They can do this by calling on Python or going into a reasoning mode and working out another way to work it out. The problem is with GPT-5, unlike the previous model, you can't reliably put it into a certain mode. So if I wanted to ask a complicated question using the previous versions, I'd use O3 because it was the reasoning model and it would be able to answer and give me a good answer. With GPT-5, it's going to route it for me and it may give it to GPT-5 high, in which case I'll get a good answer. It may give it to GPT-5 minimal or low, in which case I'm going to get a terrible answer. And right now, there's very little transparency. So OpenAI have addressed this and they've said, oh, we are going to be looking at this. This is the main problem right now with GPT-5 is this routing module. But this is quite subtle. So most people will just use GPT-5 and because it is so variable and so random and so unpredictable, very rightly think this is terrible because it is. This is a bad user experience for people. If they can fix this routing model and they can get us to the correct model or submodel all the time, fantastic. What I found is when I use GPT-5 high, so I'm using for coding in particular, it's great. It's a really good model. It's also scoring the highest on the benchmarks for like the intelligence indexes. It is a cutting edge model. It's probably the best model we have out there. But because we're not reliably given it, when we use GPT-5, we might be given medium, low, or minimal. It's really hard to see how it shines. So they've messed up. They really messed up with their routing module, basically. So I think that's one of the issues. And then the other issue is the lack of agreeableness. So 4.0 was very agreeable and very supportive, and it helped people. And that was really good for certain use cases like coaching or AI therapy or having a companion. 4.0 was much better at those use cases. The people at OpenAI have basically just, they've discounted those uses and they think that we all want to use it for technical writing and work and coding, etc. And I think this was particularly prevalent, or this was very recognizable when Sam Altman put out a statement. And then he said, oh, we underestimated the type of workflows people would be using it for. Talking to 4.0 as a friend or a companion is not a workflow. That is a relationship that people have with their AI. And I don't think the engineers at OpenAI really realized how many people were using it in that way. They discounted it, and that's why they've got a backlash. So I think there's two big issues. There's one is the killing of 4.0 because they didn't realize people needed and wanted a supported companion, and two, the routing issue. So that when you are actually asking a coding question or a business question or a work-related question, sometimes you get a great answer, sometimes you won't, and it's out of our control, which is incredibly frustrating. These are the big two issues that they're facing this week. Whether or not they'll manage to pull back and get this back on track, I don't know. It's going to be a rough week for OpenAI, basically. High Fruit says, which mode are you using at the moment? I'm just using the default. Honestly, I'm primarily using GPT-5 via Cursor, so I'm using it to code at the moment. So it doesn't really matter which personality. Well, sorry, there is no personality. So that's the majority of my usage, and it's really good for that. When I use it in the application, I'm just using default. It's perfectly fine for me. I personally, and this is a personal preference thing, I like my artificial intelligences to be direct. I also like them to call me out if I'm saying something that is stupid. So for me, I didn't particularly like 4.0 because it would be like, yeah, that's great. And then I would change my mind and be like, oh, yeah, that's great too. I don't like that. I prefer something that says, no, what are you talking about? Actually, you need to do it this way. So for me, GPT-5 is great, but I fully understand why for other people it might not be. We all have different needs because we have different tasks and we're using the AIs for different things. So I think giving it personalities is a step in the right direction. However, most people won't know about how to swap personalities in the same way that most people before GPT-5 didn't know about the different models. Remember, there are 700 million users of ChatGPT. Very few of them will know about these additional details. You guys do because you're watching a live stream or you're watching social media about AI. Most of the people out there don't know this kind of stuff. So I think there's still going to be frustration out in the world moving forward. One good thing is it's getting people to try Claude. I've seen a lot of people saying, I'm using Claude now and it's much better. Yes, Claude is great. You should use Claude. So that's a happy shift at least. James Brown says, has it changed? I've been talking to Betty lately and she's not been the same. Yes, the new models rolled out last Friday. So we've shifted from the 4 series, so GPT-4, GPT-4o, and o3. They've got terrible names. I'm sorry about that. It's not my fault, but they do have terrible names. They've now shifted to GPT-5. So if you have noticed changes to Betty, that's why. If you are on a paying plan, so Plus or Pro, you can go into settings, turn on legacy models, and then change it back to 4.0. 4.0 used to be the default last week. Now it is in 5. So that should put Betty back to normal. Personally feel GPT-5 is nothing more than gating to reduce CPU and NG loads. Yeah, 100%. So that's why they have the multiple models. So the idea is pretty good. The idea is we're going to have a unified model so that our 700 million users who aren't advanced, who are beginners, they can just log on, they can just open up the app, and they don't need to worry about what model to use. They don't need to worry about anything like that. We're going to do all of that behind the scenes, basically. So the idea is good. It's also a good idea because it is more environmental. It uses less power. So let's say I do give it a very basic query and I ask, what's the capital of Paraguay, for example. I don't need the top end model, something like an O3, to work that out for me. I don't need it to go through all of those additional steps and chains of thought and therefore waste more electricity. Instead, we can have a stripped down model. Just give me the answer. Nice and easy. So that's the kind of idea here, is that you have 4 buckets. You have high, medium, low, and minimal. And depending on the nature of the query, the complexity of the query, it's going to be dumped into one of these 4 buckets. So in theory, it's a really good idea because it does reduce the energy use of inference of using artificial intelligence. And that helps reduce the cost for OpenAI. Yes, but it also reduces the electricity usage. Good. We love that. The problem is the routing, is the fact that of those 4 buckets, right now, GPT-5 is rubbish at putting you in the right bucket. Obviously, if we want the best answer to our questions, we just want it to put us in the high bucket, to put us in the best model most of the time. But the problem with that is that's costing OpenAI the most to perform that. It's also slower. We're going to get a slower answer, et cetera, et cetera. So if they can nail routing, if they can get that to work, GPT-5 will be great. And I think this will probably be where models in the future will go as we move forward. I think we'll look back at this time and think of it as really cute that we actually had a little selector that allowed us to select what model we wanted to use. I think that's going to feel a bit like floppy disks or like very early computers. I think later on we won't have to worry about this in the same way that when people use an iPad now, they're not thinking at all about the inner workings of a computer. Like, it's very different from using MS-DOS or Windows 3.1 or having to build your own PC, that kind of very gnarly early beginning of computing. I think that's where we are right now with ChatGPT, with generative AI, modern generative AI, which is why we, as more advanced users, we're happy to change models and to tinker around and put system prompts and custom settings, etc. We're happy to do that because we're on the leading edge of what's happening right now. 10 years time, no way. This will be iPads. This will be all encased and the controls will be removed unless you're extremely advanced and you'll build your own systems so that the majority, billions of people, can use this without having to think. That's where we are going. I think OpenAI have just pushed out the boat a little bit too early because they have not nailed the routing problem. So you get sent to the wrong model and you get a poor answer from GPT-5. Once they get that sorted, I believe all models from all different providers are going to be going in this way. They're giving you a unified experience, which means a unified user interface, a unified user experience. And that's going to be much better for the majority of their customers, not for you and me. We like to mess around with this stuff, but for the 700 million other people out there, it's going to be a much better experience. And that's ultimately where their customer base is, not for us, the early adopters.